Hi, I'm Regan Robinson, your host of Future Fit, the only podcast unraveling the secrets of how the world's most innovative leaders stay future ready in a fast-paced world. I've spent over 20 years as a futurist and strategist, transforming top global brands and putting investment-backed startups on paths to sustainable growth. Along the way, I've become obsessed with new ways to prepare for the future, because thinking about the long term once a year simply isn't enough. In each episode, I talk with movers, shakers, and path breakers who share their stories about how they turn uncertainty into their strategic advantage. Throughout our journey, we'll discover unconventional and imaginative ways to help you thrive today while leading your teams into tomorrow. Future Fit leaders know that being prepared for what's next is more than a business decision. It's a way of being. Let's venture together as we co-create a new future readiness playbook. The future can't wait, and neither can I. So, are you ready to get future fit? So, welcome to the Spotlight episode of Future Fit, where my special co-host, Valerie Mazan, and I dive into how the most innovative talent executives are reimagining leader development to future ready their teams and companies. Valerie is the president and co-founder of Sounding Board, a trailblazer in leader transformation, offering high-impact coaching, mentoring software, and strategic program design for top-tier clients like Chime, Zoom, and the Wellstar Health System. I've also had the pleasure of hosting Valerie previously on my show, and so I'm incredibly excited to bring her perspectives and expertise to this vital conversation. And today, we are thrilled to have Valerie Capers Workman join us. Valerie focuses on helping employers define and execute their talent acquisition strategies and is the Chief Talent Engagement Officer of Handshake. Handshake is the #1 platform connecting up-and-coming talent with over 900,000 employers, and Handshake most recently raised $200 million in a Series F round, bringing their valuation to $3.5 billion. Bravo.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Valerie empowers growth-focused companies to scale with excellence quickly and efficiently while managing risk. And she's a leading voice at the intersection of AI, careers, and global workforce planning. Valerie is also the author of the groundbreaking book, Quantum Progression, The Art and Science of Career Advancement in the Age of AI, which is one of the first ever books published on the subject. And she has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Time.com, and many, many more. Welcome to Future Fit, Valerie.
I am so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Likewise, Lori and I are thrilled. So let's kick off our adventure together with the question that I ask every guest on the show, which is, what does future ready mean to you?
For me, future ready means understanding and accepting the impact that AI is going to have on your entire life, particularly your career, making your peace with it, and getting to know it as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
And maybe even utilizing it for your advancement.
Absolutely. It's going to be critical for your advancement. Impossible to advance without it.
There you go.
Yeah, well, I think what really comes up for me in what you said is this acceptance component.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful, and something I am always reminding leaders of is the only thing that is certain is change and uncertainty. That is the only, and nobody can predict the future. If anybody says they can predict the future, run. And those leaders and talent and companies that will thrive in the present and in the future are those who embrace the idea that future readiness is a mindset and a way of being. It's a way of leading and moving through the world in your personal life and your professional life. And I think there's something really powerful about accepting the idea that the only thing that you can change is yourself, and the only thing that you can control is yourself. I know I personally have to do a lot of deep work and myself working with executive coaches in psychotherapy. I'm a rewired type A overachiever, and I think after many years of work, that for me has been a big strategic advantage of like accepting that reality and having faith in the future.
Yeah, and just I want to hit on accepting one more minute before we move on. I know it's like the quick icebreaker, but it's so important to stay on this for 2 seconds because there was this moment where AI is going to change everything and everyone felt they had to focus on it. And then maybe about a year ago, the media story started saying, hey, it's overblown. It's not going to take over everything. Don't have to pay too much attention to it. It's all a lot of hype. That's when I started getting worried because I'm thinking, and I know it's not hype. And so the acceptance part is so important. Forget any of the stories that you're seeing that it's hype and it's too much. It's not, it is going to take over everything. And the sooner everyone accepts it as a reality, the more prepared you're going to be to take on challenges of the future, particularly with your career. So acceptance is key. Yeah.
Acceptance is really like the first step of a mindset shift because being the probably oldest one on here, like the technological changes around having, I see you have a typewriter in your background, like moving to a desktop computer and then to laptops and then to your phone. No one was saying we're not accepting this, right? It might have been slow acceptance, but as people started doing it, they found the value. And I think something that happened in the press is like it made AI scary instead of just another technological advancement that's going to make all our lives better. Like nobody can imagine going without their mobile phone. In the future, no one's going to imagine going without AI either, but they're not quite seeing it yet. And somehow it seems a little scary. So that acceptance plus a mindset shift that this is like just normal technological advancement and maybe accelerated. You know, we've been accelerating over the last 20, 30 years, but still it's not like we haven't done this before.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. A reminder, this isn't, this isn't new necessarily. We may have the new technology, but again, change, the only thing that is constant is change. I love that. So
yeah, I kind of feel like when people see the benefit to them, their acceptance will increase. Like when everyone figured out, like, oh, I can do this on my phone, cool. Then they got excited about it when they figure out, oh, wait, this can save me 2 hours of research. I can get this number in 30 seconds. I think people are going to start to embrace it more enthusiastically.
yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into the AI angle and narrow in a little bit on how it intersects with leader development and future readiness, because they're actually deeply entwined. So not only is AI transforming how companies anticipate future challenges, it's transforming how they build leader capacity, how they tailor learning programs to individual needs. And so it's a tool, right, and a catalyst for really shaping future ready leaders to embrace complexity while it also propels innovation and can drive growth. Now, your book focuses on career advancement in the age of AI. So how are you using AI to maybe reshape the traditional pathways of leader development at Handshake? And what are either some surprising ways you've seen it accelerate leader development or accelerate building future ready skills in your talent?
So two quick things, just a bit of explanation on Handshake, because I think it's important to give a broader context on what we
Yeah,
do. So
please.
yes, as you mentioned, 900,000 employers, that is true. But critically important, there are 15 million students on the platform, and there are 2,000 colleges, universities, boot camps, et cetera. And so our mission at Handshake is to ensure that we know talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And so our job is to make certain that companies are aware of the vast amount of talent that is available to them and don't miss any simply by going to the same traditional schools or the same traditional events, but ensuring that they have a wide and vast pipeline. And so while we focus on that aspect for talent acquisition, one of the things I also do, I spend a lot of time talking with CHROs, talent acquisitions, C leaders, and executives on how to build their workforce for the future. And so when I talk about AI in the concept of leadership, it's from the perspective of to be an excellent leader, to do your job well, requires the ability to digest, ingest a vast amount of data. There is more proliferation of data now than ever before. That means the access and the ability to make bad decisions based on improperly utilizing that data are greater than ever before. And AI is the key tool to help ensure that you, A, are looking at the right data, and B, making the right decisions based on that data. And if you're not using it and your competitors are, you're going to make bad decisions, bad outcomes, and you're going to decrease your profitability, and you probably won't last long. You probably have about a 5-year arc, and then you probably won't be in business any longer. So it's a mission critical tool. But the most important aspect of AI, no matter where you are in the talent, if you're just starting out, or if you're trying to be a C-level executive, helping your company scale globally, AI is a way to help you understand, organize, and utilize data. And without it, you're not going to be effective, and you're not going to continue to be successful.
Love that definition, because one of the big problems has just been the overwhelming amount of information and data, and no way to sort whether that data is valid or not. So using AI to help manage and mold that data into something that's useful for decision making is a big, very big advantage of it. I would just also say, and I'm not sure how this fits with Handshake and the newest generations coming into the workforce, but I think I can really help personalize the development experience, because again, you can consume so much information about that individual and then create development pathways and support approaches to advance that individual specifically in a way that works for them, versus old style training, which is kind of like generalized to the masses.
Absolutely. You can fine tune very specific skill sets that are used in very specific industries in very specific regions, and AI can help tailor the training on whatever the space is specifically to that person and how it's going to be deployed. This is an opportunity that didn't exist, 3 years ago. And so now development is easier, it's faster, more specially tailored, and easier to help, whether you're a student, trying to figure out what specific skill set, give you an example, coding. Learning how, now that we can go into an argument about whether you need to learn how to code, but that's a different conversation.
That might not be a future career pathway.
Let's say for now, you need to learn how to code. You literally can learn how to code by getting the right AI tool that will teach you how to code. And so whether or not that's part of your school curriculum, you have the ability now to access, and a lot of it is free. So you have the ability to access specific tools for your development that will teach you how to do a very specific thing just because of the advent of AI. Now, I don't want to say that AI is without its issues, and we'll probably get into that in a minute, because there are bias issues, there are equity issues, there are a lot of challenges with AI, and there are great smart minds, working to make sure that, the playing field remains level. But empirically speaking, the best way to be able to develop and enhance your skills now in a way that never existed before is because of the advent and the proliferation of AI tools.
Yeah. And it's not just at the skill level. At Sounding Board, we always talk about the 3 levels of development. Skill level being foundational, a capability level that's above that, and then this capacity level for leaders that kind of takes, people from good to exceptional. And all of those areas, starting at the skill level, benefit from AI, because that you can ingest all the assessments, all the performance evaluations, all kinds of feedback, all the information about what makes a good leader. You can just mix that up almost like a recipe for the leader's development and make recommendations for, here's some places to work and develop, and here's some ways that you can do it. So I think it's really a boon for the individual employee and leader development industry.
Agree.
Yeah. Well, I think what's coming up for me is, the insights that you gain from using AI. There's the possibility of uncovering potential, whether that's
yes.
or
I like that way of saying it.
Market potential in unexpected places.
Like
so
that.
People and opportunities who may not fit the conventional mold, but possess critical future ready qualities as something so I'm very passionate about, like adaptability, emotional intelligence, and problem solving under pressure. So I think
Yeah.
the power of it to identify these hidden assets and the intangibles like curiosity, resilience, empathy, I think is why I think this intersection of AI leader development and future readiness is really powerful. It's like you have to look at it, like click a couple lenses. A lot of my work, I talk about, I'm always clicking kaleidoscopes. I think, Lori, your framework is a great example of how people are just thinking about it. Oh, I can do my job faster. But I think what we're all talking about here is there's actually several layers to how both at Sounding Board and at Handshake that you are utilizing the tool and the technology to develop people in these various capacities.
And I think it's important from an equity perspective. AI allows us to redefine what it means to be a leader and redefine how we train leaders. And this is not so much Handshake specific, but sort of universal truth.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with an exec earlier about the importance of how we used to make eye contact so important. If you were not able to make eye contact, somehow that meant you weren't a great leader. Well, there are people on the developmental and the sort of the emotional and the neural spectrum that are not, eye contact is not their first resource. It's not their first way that they ingest or make connections with people. That has nothing to do with their capabilities as a leader. And so AI assessment tools
100%.
are really enable us to assess what's their capacity for leadership outside of what are the typical ways we used to identify leaders. So it's really opened up a great avenue of equity so that we can redefine what it means to be a leader. So there's some great opportunities with AI right now that are extremely exciting.
I also wrote a book, Valerie, called Leadership Revolution. And one of the things I do
in I read it cover to cover in like 2 days. I'm not kidding. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to say that. Genuine
okay. Yeah, in case you're interested. But exactly that concept, which is so much of the leader development industry is based on this last century view that leadership really identified to a middle-aged white male. And then trying to say hey, there's a whole lot of ways to be a leader that are in addition to that one way, and not just like neurodivergent, but even just basic style. Like half the population doesn't use direct eye contact. And if you look culturally as well, in some cultures, that's considered actually very rude and impolite. So then how are you going to say everybody should do that and it's going to be successful? No. So this very personalized, individualized approach to leader development, I think, is going to be the underpinning for a much more diverse approach to leadership. Because the reality is, if there was one way to be a leader, we would have a zillion great leaders. And we can look out there and see that we don't have that. So there isn't one way to do it.
Yeah. Now, Valerie, you mentioned eliminating, or you talked about bias and AI. I'm going to go off script a little bit. Now, fun fact or true story, I guess, I actually use AI to help me prepare for all my pod interviews. And as I was preparing for this question, I think AI was hallucinating a bit because it was talking about how it eliminates bias in leadership selection. I was like, I don't know. I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but something's spelled right here.
Was that a hallucination, or was that the algorithm that someone created to try and mitigate what's actually happening? But we won't go there.
Yeah. So is there anything that maybe you want to share around things that you're doing as you're experimenting or using the technology, to be mindful of the stumbling block of bias?
So there are so many entry points in the utilization process where bias can impact how the tool is being deployed. It really requires EQ on the user. So it's an interesting challenge in that the better your EQ, the better you'll be able to utilize the AI tools. But you have to know where the issues are in order to know how to mitigate. So something as traditional as unconscious bias which is training that sort of, maybe in the last 10 years really started to become really popular. And then it kind of fell off a little bit because, oh, we don't need that. Well, look, guess what? With AI, unconscious bias training is now more important than it was before. So that ability to identify where, now it's an algorithm, so it's not a person, but an ability to enter. So, hey, that's a great lane, by the way. Somebody should create unconscious bias training for algorithms usage. But make a note.
Yeah, absolutely.
into some future founder. But the importance of understanding where those issues are, so that when the answer comes back, there's a way to ensure that you are, solving for bias is really critical. But you have to know where it can be found. For example, and that also requires you to be sort of a expert in the actual thing you're looking at, so that you can know when bias is occurring. So it's an interesting challenge that you can't be a complete novice when you're using an AI tool. You have to have the technical acumen to use it, so that you understand when the bias is occurring, so that you understand when you're getting an answer that might not be right. Very simple example. My son did the cover for my book. He's a computer science major. He's an AI artist, and there's a whole controversy over AI art, so we can go there. But he was using a prompt to create a cover, and it said, give me a collection of professionals across various diversities, so that looks like a inclusive cover. And he kept putting the prompt in, and he kept getting the same monochromatic, standard male, white male. And it took an hour and a half to 2 hours to finally train it on what it was actually being asked, to get a response of a group of professionals that look like, America. And so it was really interesting that, there's so many algorithm issues with the algorithms, that you have to have patience when you're trying to get data out of it. But I think understanding where the biases might occur when you're asking questions about physical representation, when you're asking questions about gender representation, when you're asking it to give you, for another example, I asked a question today. I was doing some research, and I said, tell me all the HBCUs that have computer science majors. And it gave me like 10 out of 50. And so it's really challenging. That's a whole topic, but I will just say unconscious bias and understanding where bias might occur in the response is a skill set in and of itself, and worthy of developing when you're utilizing these tools. A very long answer,
but well, exactly right. And that's hitting on one of my big AI concerns, which is it's drawing from a mass of information that has the bias inherently embedded in it. And a big plus for AI would be if it could filter out that embedded kind of inherent bias. But because it's drawing from the middle section of the bell curve of the mass of information, it tends to push everything down to that midline. And, that's not always the best, most unbiased information. So I do think that's going to be one of the big problems that's going to have to be solved over time, because it's not just the algorithm, it's where the information is being drawn from. And if you're drawing from the historical amount of information, you could imagine the bias would be fairly extreme in some ways.
And that's why, for leaders to understand where these issues exist, those are the leaders who are going to truly be able to leverage this technology, because they know where the challenges are as well as the opportunities, and bias is one of the top challenges.
Yeah, got it.
Well, so I've been cheesing and smiling so big, Valerie, because actually one of the things that makes my approach to foresight and futurism that's a little bit different is I actually start with the people and the humans in the room, and I go through a series of unconscious biases and unhelpful assumptions work, right? Before we even begin to start envisioning what could be the future of your company, or whatever the problem is we're trying to, or the future or futures, I should say, we're trying to envision. And so I appreciate your provocation because now I'm like, usually it's me done through a facilitated type of experience with a bunch of leaders, but now I'm wondering if there might be a deeper level or other value that I can create in my journey working with leaders in that area, because it all comes down to unconscious biases and unhelpful assumptions. When you're trying to think about your long-term plan, I don't care if it's your life or your business, it doesn't matter. It
Or
all
your career. Yeah.
Great
yeah,
point.
you have to get it all out on the table.
That's
Like,
right.
what am I holding on to? What are we as a group holding on to? Okay, now we've got it out on the table. What do we want to take with us as we move forward into whatever we're doing next? And what can we leave because it's getting in the way?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So heading towards the people side of things, Sounding Board is actually a leadership coaching company. And that means, person to person interaction around leadership development. How do you see like the personal interaction blending with the use of AI and in these like training modalities or development modalities?
Yeah, I think one of the most fascinating outcomes of the advent of AI is the more we understand how the human equation is more critical, which is, I think, the first time in technology where that has been the case. And so it is it is astonishing how important EQ is now. And EQ is another sort of concept that started to fade, got really popular maybe about 10, 15 years ago. Everybody was talking about EQ. And then all of a sudden, that great noise died down. It was perceived to be less important because technology was going to enable us to do all these great things. And what do we learn? Lo and behold, EQ is more important now than ever, because in order to synthesize what is happening in AI, the human element is more critical. And where we see this in the education spaces, we're seeing a lot of tech companies now who are hiring computer scientists, data scientists, requiring liberal arts and humanities backgrounds from students,
Yes.
because guess what? The ability to think creatively, the ability to write creatively, the ability to reason, the ability to use and understand how human emotion comes into play with business decisions is more important than ever. So it is almost mind-boggling how important EQ, liberal arts, humanities education is now, because the human component is the most important component of the equation when using AI. I don't think anyone saw this coming, but I am thrilled. I am beyond thrilled. That's where we are right now.
Yeah, I don't think anyone saw it coming, and I'm not sure everyone is realizing it yet either, but the pendulum really is swinging back the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think what's coming up for me, which kind of dovetails into the next question that we have, is so we've talked a lot about the tech. So let's dive into maybe more of the EQ and the human side of things, because again, as I firmly believe that the EQ equation is super important for being future ready leaders, talent, and companies, because again, everything is going to change all the time. And if you're not leading from a place of resilience, adaptability, optimism,
Self-awareness.
awareness,
Self-awareness.
acceptance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then good luck.
Yeah.
You're always going to be on this hamster wheel. And in my experience, future ready companies really prioritize developing these types of EQ skills, whether it's resilience, adaptability, because then it empowers their team members to embrace change, take risks, contribute innovative ideas, especially when they feel supported. And you've talked about how creating a culture of care is an environment where all employees can thrive and grow and contribute meaningfully. And so what steps are you taking to ensure all of Handshake's talent, or even the talent that you're working with on the student side, feel valued, supported, or developing these EQ skills? We'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that. So one, we are helping employers understand what students and candidates are looking for in a company, because understanding that helps them to create an environment where they feel welcomed. And so because we have all this great and rich data from these 15 million students, we know what the top priorities are. And interestingly enough, they're not what one would think from conventional wisdom or anecdotal information. For
Oh,
example, number
interesting.
one, they're most interested in stability. Now, think about what Gen Z is quote unquote known for. They're known for they want to move around, they want to have flexibility, they want to job hop. That is not true today. Today, because of what they've seen with layoffs, because of what they've seen with the economy, stability is their number one desire. And so a company
Mm.
that talks about joining us as a stable career, interesting enough, the two industries that are most attractive now to Gen Z are what? Government and healthcare. Because those are the two types of roles where people
Wow.
tend to stay the list. Isn't that mind-boggling? Another interesting fact where data is more important than conventional wisdom, because you'd never think that. But they want
Right.
stability. They want to go to those companies where people are there 5, 10, 15, 20 years because they
Mm.
don't want to have change. So creating a culture of care is letting prospective candidates know, we know that stability is important to you. And here's how we show up for stability. Our employees tend to stay X amount of years. Another way to show a culture of care and understanding what they're looking for. Students are very interested in, now hold on to your hats, retirement benefits. Now think about that now. When in the history of the United States of America have recent graduates cared about
Wow.
retirement benefits? But again, because they're
Yeah.
seeing what's happening in the economy, they're seeing what's happening with jobs, even though jobs are plentiful and we all know the data, their perception is that they want to ensure that if they join a company and they stay with a company, they have great retirement benefits. So companies demonstrate a culture of care by saying, we know you're stressed about when you're going to retire. Take a look at this wonderful suite of benefits that we have for you. And oh, guess what? And the ones who are also aware that students care about their student debt and are talking about repayment of student
Yeah.
loans, talk about a culture of
Yeah.
care. They are highly attractive to students. So those are the ways that companies are showing up by understanding the data, not using 2-year-old data, because COVID data has nothing to do with what Gen Z is looking for right now. So using real-time data to understand what students are looking for, what graduates looking for, and then presenting those options to them. Great way to demonstrate a culture of care.
Wow, that is really another way the pendulum is swinging back because in the last century, when or large companies used to hire employees basically right out of their education straight through to retirement, that same kind of stability, security, and a picture of your whole career to retirement was really the key. And companies spent a lot of time and money to create that. And then the pendulum swung over to the other side where you're responsible for your own career and your own life, and we're not helping you. And it sounds like which I had not heard as much, the pendulum swinging back. So, in addition to like being able to accommodate like a technology like AI, it also means staying up to date with the changing trends and then being able to adapt to those trends as well. And to Regan's point, if you can see it coming, that's actually more helpful. But even if you don't see it coming, you're saying it's right here. And any
Absolutely.
companies that haven't adapted are going to be, less favored as an employer.
Absolutely. And to go back to the concept of, leadership development, if you're not acting on real-time actual data and understanding that data changes moment by moment, and if you're basing your decisions, your strategies on things you knew to be true, not thought to be true, things you knew to be true a year ago, but they're not true today, you're creating
Yeah.
strategies, creating plans, spending money on projects and programs that will not be effective because you're using old-time data. So that whole,
Yeah.
just to go back to Gen Z really quickly, they want to work from home. They don't want to come into the office. That is 2-year-old data. So it is so critically important for leaders to understand where to get the right data and making sure they're on time with the decisions that they're making.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, I think that it's fascinating to me that the, more instant gratification generation is taking long-term view, right? And as I always say, tension, opportunities lie where there is tension, right? And so there is tension between those two things, not only within the individual, but within the corporate, startup, indie, solopreneur. I mean, all these are different, working ecosystems, if you will,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like how there's a massive opportunity to really support people along the way. And maybe it doesn't look like how we're thinking of it now, which is how it was, 50 years ago, where I work at the same company. Maybe it's an ecosystem of companies that are, cooperative, or I don't know. I mean, I'm totally spitballing here, but the point is, like, this is why it is so important to get outside your comfort zone and look up. I fundamentally believe that all the information is right in front of us if we're just looking.
No, but that's a great point. And you are right. There are different ecosystems now. Take government work, for example.
Yeah.
Students are looking to work for the government. It can be one federal agency, in 2026 and another one in 2027, but there's still the continuum is they're in the government space. So they are looking at it, and healthcare is the exact same thing. So you are spot on. The ecosystem of opportunities and the way they're looking at the future of work is very different now. And it's very important for companies, particularly those who are not in those spaces, to understand how do you compete with that. So perhaps the way to give that, that breadth of opportunity is to say every 2 years, you can opt into a different department. You can work in marketing for your first 2 years, and you can be in sales the second 2 years, you can be in finance second 2 years. So give that kind of flexibility within one ecosystem of the company. So, you're spot on that.
Oh, 100%. That's a new trend in coaching as well that we just noticed. We call it rotational support, which is companies are moving employees around within the organization. And when those employees go to new departments or business units, they need sometimes coaching support around how to adapt to that different environment. And that's literally just a recent trend within the last maybe 6, 9 months. I wanted to just talking about these youngest generations. Like, there's been quite a bit of press out there about how the youngest generations aren't ready for the workforce. And I noticed, like, the number one subject for skill training right now is business etiquette. So being like front and center there with those folks, like, what's your thought on their readiness and what would need to happen for them to be perceived as more ready?
We can do a whole hour on Gen Z and work, but a couple of really important, and I've been called the champion of Gen Z, so I'm gonna stick up
I
for
love
them in a
it.
second. I'm gonna stick up for them in a second, but I just want to set the stage. So I think we all know 5 generations in the workforce for the first time ever, but what we all may not know is in 2025 there will be more Gen Z than boomers in the workforce. So
Okay,
think about
that's
that for a
good.
second. So
Uh-huh.
think about, okay,
Yep.
so with that table being set, it is so important to understand that the employee relations teams, the employee experience teams are going to have their hands full helping all these intergenerational challenges, conflicts, and opportunities. But I will say it's important to understand that what's the role of the employer here? For example, in the challenges that we're seeing in the media with some companies saying the talent is not coming to us prepared and things are not working out, 30, 60, 90 days in, I will ask, how transparent was the interview process? How candid were you about what it's like to work in the company? Were you
And
clear
even what's required,
were
right?
you clear exactly about the expectations and the requirements,
Yes.
or did you assume that they knew? And so, the onus is on the employer to really be candid and truthful about what it is like to work in that particular company. Laura, you talk about ecosystems. There are ecosystems within companies, within departments. And so,
Yes.
even if there's one umbrella conversation about what it's like to work at XYZ company, but what is it like to work at the marketing team on XYZ company? You have to
Yep.
understand how to have that type of transparent conversation. So yes, of course, they've got to be prepared. They've got to have professional skills. but there's a lot that the employer can do to help the candidates understand what it's going to be like. And they can do that if they reach them earlier. At Handshake, you can start talking to candidates as a freshman, as a sophomore. So you can start
Oh,
saying,
nice.
these are the recommendations we have on professionalism at the workforce, and take this course on how to take feedback so that when you come into the company, you're used to understanding what it means to get feedback in it and not to take it personally. So there's lots of ways that employers
Oh, I
can
love
reach out to
that.
candidates, particularly on the Handshake platform, before they ever even start the interviewing process, so that they're better prepared for the workforce. But there's a lot to each of the parties in this equation have more that they can be doing.
Yes. And to your point about more Gen Z than boomers, Sounding Board also has a mentoring platform. And recently people have been using that for the Gen Zers to mentor the older folks in the company. And there still is a pretty big technological gap there as well, with the older folks not being as technologically savvy. And then also just very much different thinking around life and, as you're saying, the future. And we have found that the more senior leaders in the organization very much value the input of the Gen Zers into their thinking. It's actually expanding their thinking. So sometimes that's called reverse mentoring. It could just be called mentoring.
To that point, and I could do like an hour on this too. I was at Tesla before Handshake, and it's a long story. But if I did not have college age sons, I will tell you my transition into that company would have been extremely difficult. But because I had my own in-home consultants
Yeah, you had your own
helping
mentors.
helping me helping me to navigate that ecosystem, from what's the right attire, what should I wear to work, don't carry a briefcase, carry a backpack, who are these influencers that I should know, and should I know who they are. I literally had mentees in my house, and it enabled me to be a rock star almost from the beginning, because I knew the cultural landscape. And so there's
Yeah.
and technologically too. I mean, quite frankly, some of my tech skills I got from my kids, not from work.
Yeah.
And so there's
Yeah.
so much that they have to offer. So what we've got to understand in the workforce is, it's no longer that tenure is the sole arbiter of who owns the knowledge space. It is
Yes.
who owns the knowledge on the particular
Not the
issue.
length of time. Yes.
Exactly. Who owns the knowledge of the
Hmm.
issue? That's the one that gets to teach, and it's going to
Hmm.
go all different
Knowledge
ways
is
for all
power.
different.
Yep.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
well, what's coming up for me before I bring us to a close is, diversity of thought and diversity of perspectives is part of the future readiness secret sauce and recipe.
Here,
Like,
here.
bar none, the companies that cultivate that in their companies and within their cultures are the ones who are future ready and who are going to thrive in today and the future. And I love the intergenerational collaboration, co-creation, and mentoring example, because I think it is really powerful, and yet another opportunity that's just sitting in front of so many people. All the media is all around, complaining around the problems instead of accepting that this is the reality, and what opportunities does this create.
Yeah.
Amen.
100%.
Amen. Now, is there anything else either one of you would like to add before I bring us to a close?
So I would just like to say, for everyone out there, no matter where you are in your career, it is extremely critical to understand that the world of work has changed in a way unlike it has ever before. And so it is critical that you understand that there are tools that you need to have, learnings that you need to have under your belt, skills that you need. I have to say, Quantum Progression, the art and science of career advancement in the age of AI, in my opinion, is the handbook. It'll take you for the next 10 years. It's like a reference. Somebody called it a cookbook. But if it's not my book, get someone else's book. But you have to understand how AI is going to impact everything from how you search, how you interview, how you move up in your company, how you move laterally, how you scale to the C-suite. And so you've got to understand at every juncture how it impacts your career, and you'll feel much more in control if you take advantage of learning how this is going to impact you.
Yeah. And I think one thing I got from you, Valerie, is the employment and company landscape is changing much more rapidly than we realize. Like what used to be maybe a 10-year or 20-year cycle is now like a 1 or 2-year cycle. And if you're thinking it like 2023, you're already way out of date. So, yeah.
And that's why unhelpful assumptions, there are no sacred cows. It doesn't matter if your strategy, don't fall too in love with anything, because building this internal resilience and this flexibility and adaptability is so key. So with that, Valerie, where can people go to find out more about you and your work and your book?
So I'm, of course, on, well, let me say Instagram is a great resource because it's more my whole self. So I'm Valerie Capers Workman on Instagram. Love for you to follow me there because you get a wider picture of the work that I do. But of course, I'm also on LinkedIn because for people like me with a mature career who've been out of school for a long time, LinkedIn still is the place. So those are the two best places to find out about me.
Marvelous. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us and sharing your experience and your brilliant insights, Valerie. It's been really enlightening, and Lori and I have had so much fun exploring with you today.
Sounds
like very much.
We could have a few more shows in us, I think.
I think so too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Fit. If you're listening, you're probably future curious. So follow me in my newsletter on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going and share your discoveries with the Future Fit community. And if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, rate, and review Future Fit on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time.